Hello, welcome back. This is module 3, and this is the module where we're going to build a new application and talk a little bit more about MVC. So I hope you remember from lecture 4 the design pattern that Apple wants us to use and really is the most useful for most of the applications you can come up with is the MVC, the Model View Controller. And in a nutshell, it's the idea of dividing your application into 3 parts. One part is the model, and this is the knowledge, this is the data of your application. This is the most fundamental data of your application. The view is what the user sees and the user interacts with. So it's the window, the buttons, text fields, labels, etc. And the thing that connects the model and the controller, so it updates the model when user has some action and gets notified by the model when model changes and updates the view, is the controller. And it is there to divide the view and the model so that the model and the view don't know anything about one another. And you can easily change the view or change the model, and the model doesn't know anything about the visual side of your program, and the view, the windows, and the buttons don't know anything about the data and how this data behaves. Apple doesn't just want us to use it, it gives us a lot of things that makes using MVC easier. And one of those things is the NSController object, NSController class, and many other classes that inherit from NSController to work with our model. So one NSController class that we're going to use in this lecture is NSArrayController, and as you can see from the name, it's a controller that helps us to work with the array if our model is an array. And this is the structure of the program that we're going to build. We're going to build a simple program that has one window, one table, and 2 buttons. Clicking one button will create a new employee and add it to this table. And we're going to have the name of the employee and the expected raise of salary for that employee. And the second button will remove the employee that is currently selected. We're going to use this application in the following lectures. We're going to just build on top of it as we follow the Cocoa course. And for now, we're going to have this. And this might look complicated, but this is really easy. So we have the controller, and this is the NSArrayController. And we have 2 buttons I just described. And those 2 buttons will send the messages to the controller. So they have the controller as the target, and they have 2 actions, the add action for the add button and remove action. We also have the can remove boolean, and that will do 2 things. It will make the button to remove disabled if there's nothing to remove, if you cannot remove anything, and it will do something to the controller, but this is not we worry about because this NSArrayController is given for us. It will react to what we do with the buttons, change the model, and not just change the model, but also update the view, because the controller does both 2 things. The view we have to show the data we have is the table view, and it has 2 columns. It's a column for the name and a column for the arrays. So this is the view, and the buttons are the view. The controller is the controller, and this whole thing on the right is the model. We have the document, and the document is represented by an array, an mutable array in this example. An array will be filled with objects of class person, which we are going to create. So let's just go and create one. This is Xcode. As usual, we're creating a new Cocoa application, and the only difference is this time we're going to click this, and we're going to say, I want to create a document-based application. And the document-based application is the application that works with multiple documents. And example of that application is Xcode. When you open Xcode, you have all those files on the left, and those are multiple documents. So I saved our time and I created an application and just draw the interface. So this is the table. It's going to show our employees, and those are two buttons. I didn't add anything else and I didn't change anything else, so this should be a fresh start for both of us. So first things first, I need to create a class for a person. So I'm going to go to new file and create Objective-C class. Will be called person, inherit from NSObject, save at the same folder, nothing new. And here we go. So I have the person header file, and the model is really simple. The person has the name, NS string, and I have a float expected raise. This is the percentage of the salary that is going to be expected by this employee. I want to create properties for these ones, so I'm going to say property float expected raise. For some reason it doesn't escape complete, and the property for the NS string. This is an NS string, not NS mutable string, so we cannot change the value once it's created. But we want to create a property, so I have to say copy, meaning when I do change this, I want to change the copy. And say NS string the name. So this is fine. I'm gonna go to my implementation, and I want, of course, to synthesize the name and synthesize expected raise. Okay, so when we create a new instance of this variable, I want to fill those fields with some default values. So for this, I have to override my init function. So I'm gonna do this. It's a function that returns ID, and it's an init that doesn't take any parameters. First, of course, we have to call the init of the parent. So I'm gonna say self equals super init. And if it's fine, as usual, if self, then I want to set my expected raise to be some default. Let's say it's 0.3%, not that much. And I want to set the name to be, it's an string, so let's say unnamed person. And it, of course, should return itself. Okay, we have everything we need for the person. Let's go to the document. The document is going to have the array of our employees. So I want to create a new NS mutable array, and it's going to be called, yeah, this is bad. Let's call it employees. And I want to create a void function, set employees. It will take NS mutable array and let's go and implement those. So we have for the document the init here. I want to initialize the array, of course. So I have the employees to be equal to NS mutable array, allocate the array, and initialize the object so we can work with it. And this warning says it's incomplete implementation. It's saying that because we didn't implement set employees yet. So let's try that. And if it's already set, so if employees is equal to A, then just return and do nothing. If it's not, then say employees equals to A. Okay, I think that's it. Let's go to the interface now. So we have those blank interface elements that don't do anything yet, and I want to connect it to the model. So I need the controller, and my model is based on the array. So I want to create an array controller. I don't have to create it because it's provided for me. So in my object library, and I'm going to type array, and I see this array controller, a Cocoa bindings compatible class that manages a collection of objects. So this is not a visual thing, so I cannot put it on my interface, but I can add it to my application right here. So now, first I want to bind it, my content array, to a files owner employees. This is the array that we use. And I want to set it to the class name that we use as a collection, the person, and two keys for that person. One is the name, and second one is expected race. Oops, typo, race. Okay, now I want those buttons to add a new employee and remove the selected one. And luckily I can target my controller. So I'm gonna control drag from add new to array controller and select add, and from remove to the same thing and select remove. Another thing I want to have is if there's nothing to remove and my controller knows it because it handles the model, then I want this button to be disabled. So it's selected now. I go to bindings, and I have different bindings like we saw in the last example. I want to make it enabled or disabled by the array controller's model key path of can remove. Okay, I think that's it. Let's try and run this thing. So there's nothing to remove and my button is disabled. Let's add a new thing and nothing happens. And nothing happened because I forgot to bind the columns themselves. So I'm not seeing anything visually. So if I click 3 times on this thing, I'm going to select my first column and I want to bind this to the name. And the second column is, of course, I want to bind it to expected race. Another thing which is good to do is I know that my expected race is a percentage, and those tables are editable. When I created the table, I selected editable right there. Here. So if I change the value to something that is not a number or not percent, I'm gonna see a bad error. So I want to make this column to be only a percent. For this, I have a number formatter, and I'm gonna just select it here and drag it on to my cell. So it's for the cell, but it's actually for the whole column. And it's selected now. The style I want to choose is %, and as you can see, there are different things. I can select currency and decimal, etc. I want to have a lenient %. So let's try how this works. I build and run this application. I click add new, and I have this unnamed person with a 0.3% raise. So it wasn't 0.3, it was a float of 3, 30% of 0.3 out of 1. And as you can see, I can double click and say this is Hero Petrovich, and I can change the race to, and if I just type the number, it will be the percent. I don't have to put the percent sign, and if it's really big one, it will make it as much sensible percent as I can. But if I make it this, it will say, well, this is not valid, and I can just hit OK or discard the change. If I hit OK, I have to type something real, and I can remove, but this doesn't work because I did something wrong again. So what did I do wrong? This remove binding was the array controller can remove. I'm not sure. Let's just do it like this for now. Stop the previous one. And if I just add new ones, I can remove them as well. And this table works as a table. Now I can sort it, and I can sort this, and I can even create my custom sorting mechanism for this. So this is how binding works, and this is one of the things we're going to use a lot. We're going to use key value observing a lot, and binding as the implementation, really nice and useful implementation of key value coding and observing. Okay, this is it for module 3.